Hello everyone, I will commentate on my match versus Andrea Shukov, my longtime friend and sparring partner. We've had a fascinating 4-game blitz match. At home, you can see some of my cats in the background, there will be more. And he opens up with one c4 and I respond by playing g6. I want to go for the King Indian-esque setup. He goes for e3, a cagey setup for white, not going for the main lines, something that Hikaru, for example, often likes doing, putting the bishop on b2, on b2 and e2. But here he goes for d4, and I strike with c5. I strike his pawn chain, because my dark squared bishop will be a monster if that diagonal opens up. This is a standard idea in such a setup. Now I want to activate my light squared bishop, also to fine shadow it, to put it on the long diagonal on b7. But this plan has its own drawbacks, because he can block my bishop with his pawns, my light squared bishop. This is a possibility that will happen shortly, you will see it. So he advances his central pawn. I put my bishop, light squared bishop, on the long diagonal, but he just blocks it. And it's a great move according to the engine, and white enjoys some advantage because positionally white has more space and one of my bishops is stupid. Even though the other one, the dark squared bishop, now has opened. And I tried to open the light squared bishop as well. This is very important. In chess, you should give breathing space to your pieces. You should activate them. Piece activity is more important than material. Do not forget it. Sometimes when you have the choice between giving up a pawn or not giving it up, but worsening the position of your pieces, you should give up a pawn in most cases. This is what professionals do, because you can always win material if your pieces are monsters, if they are the bishops like C, the best diagonals, and the knights are in the center. So here he gives me a concession of sorts, because now my light square bishop has a target on e4, and I stop to think for some time whether I take the pawn on e6 or on e4, but I cannot, unfortunately, take on e4 without losing material, because he will take my pawn on f7 with check, and if I take it back with the rook, then his knight will jump into g5, attacking the rook. So I decide correctly to take that pawn on e6, and he pushes e5. That's like very logical. I thought it's a great move, but the engine doesn't like it, because apparently I can equalize here if I just take. But I didn't like taking, because my pawn on e6 will be backwards and the queens will get exchanged, and I thought I'll preserve more pieces on the board, rotate my knight. The engine, of course, laughs at me. May I remind you that I'm rated just 2000 in classical FIDE, 2300 on chess.com, and Andrew's rated 2100 in classical FIDE, and also around 2300 on chess.com. So we are not chess gods, and of course we make mistakes. Here he attacks my queen, I move it to c7, and immediately I realize this is a stupid move, because I just give him a tempo to attack my queen. But this is blitz. Such things happen. Even Magnus Carlsen sometimes hands mate in one in blitz, so do not judge me too harshly, please. The position is still very playable. My queen and my knight both defend the d6 pawn, and his queen and his knight attack it, so it's under some pressure. But yes, he can take it, but the b2 pawn will be hanging, and then his d6 pawn will be a weakness. Maybe it will be a strength. But I'm quite optimistic here, and he is spending more time than I do. It's very important. The clock is the 17th piece, as they say, and it is true, especially true in blitz. Time management is very, very, very important. I should say that Andrew, my friend and my sparring partner, has not played a lot of chess recently, so he has focused on many other things. His work, he works in IT, and he's a very successful professional, so he has lots of other things to do, and he has not had lots of practice, so that's why probably his time management is questionable in this game. And here he offers a queen trade, and I decide, yeah, I'll grab his b2 pawn. Somehow the engine doesn't like it. The engine says that I should just go immediately for the d6 pawn instead, but I decide to grab a pawn while I can, and then to retreat with the bishop. The engine actually likes this d7, if I'm not mistaken here, just pushing the pawn forward. Or bishop e7 is a nice idea for white. And here I have to block this bishop. I forget to block it first, but he attacks my bishop, and now I realize that I have to block his bishop. First I attack his rook, and then finally I realize that if I do not block his bishop, he will put it on e7 and it will be a monster piece. So yeah, I block it and I should trade it off, and that will mean that there will be one less piece protecting, defending his d6 pawn, and the d6 pawn is clearly, yes, it is a strength, but also, as I already said, it may be a weakness for white. Now he trades, he shouldn't have traded. Now I have completely equalized, and also on time I have a big advantage. So I'm feeling really optimistic here. I activate my rook. I'm preparing to put more pressure on him. He jumps in with his knight, but I decide, you know what, he's not threatening anything, but I have to kick the knight back with my pawn, and if the knight just retreats, then I've won a tempo. The engine likes it, already saying that black is better. So if he retreats, I will push my pawn, the central pawn, e5. But here he finds some tactics. He decides, you know what, I will not retreat, I will exchange the bishops. If you take my bishop, I will take it back by the knight, and the knight will be nicely positioned. But here, kudos to me, I find some tactics. I find some really nice tactics. So my bishop is hanging, his knight is hanging, his bishop is hanging. I do not take anything, I just add another attacker. Knight e5 is a great move. Attacking the rook, not taking the bishop, not taking the knight. It will wait, it will wait. He has to move the rook, and now my knight is on a perfect square. It can take, I can take 2 times on f3 and spoil his pawn structure, and the endgame is very much better for me. Already, like, maybe not winning, but very advantageous, because I will finally take the d6 pawn and play for a win, and his pawn structure is spoiled, and the engine says it's minus 1.4 already, so close to winning advantage for black, but it's blitz. It's blitz, of course. We make some hasty moves, and part of my advantage evaporates. Here I should have pushed my a pawn, but instead I traded it for the d pawn. I decided to play fast, not to calculate. Practically, it was a good choice, but objectively now the position is equal, because the amount of the number of pawns for both sides is the same, and he can trade all the pawns on the queen side, and 3 versus 3 on the king side will be a draw, even though his pawns are doubled, the f pawns. So he'll trade the a and c pawn for the b and c pawn, and I decide, okay, whatever, I'll try my luck. I'll activate my king. I decided that activating my king is very important in this endgame, as it is in any endgame. Now I push my c pawn, and his a pawn is dangerous, but he has to give it up because my c pawn is also dangerous, a passed pawn. So here he resigns himself to the fact that he has to trade the a pawn for the c pawn, spend some more time. This is like not advisable to spend time in such a position. Now he realizes he has not enough time, and he starts to pick up the pace, as Hikaru would say. 3 versus 3. Again, it's a dead draw, but I have some pressure because my pawns are better. Maybe in some pawn endgames I can push, and I offer a trade of rooks. He correctly decides not to go for this, even though the pawn endgame could be also drawn. He checks me, I retreat with the king. He tries to activate his rook, but like, yeah, it's a dead draw. We can just shuffle the pieces, but I decide to go for more. I decide to exchange the pawns, and importantly I take with the king, because now my h pawn is a passed pawn. And here he trades, he correctly evaluates this as a draw, but I decided in practical play, like, pawn endgames can be tricky. So of course if I take, it's a draw. That's why I push e4, and here he makes a fatal blunder with no time on the clock. And I pause because I calculate, I realize if I push my pawn, yeah, he realizes this as well. If I push my pawn, he will lose the f4 pawn. King f5 will be next, yeah, and he resigns. Pawn endgames. Yeah, he didn't he didn't shake my hand because he didn't see it, and yeah, it was not on purpose. Okay, game 2. It will be even more fascinating. I'm now playing with the white pieces, and Andrew is trying to compose himself psychologically. It's very important, by the way. In this case, I do not disapprove of such times usage, because it is important. Psychology in chess is more important than the moves sometimes. So he spent some time to get his S together, as they say. So now get his stuff together, let's say. Let's say it this way. So this is the opening setup that I sometimes employ against the Sicilian, with the relative success. G6 is already a mistake because he weakens the dark squares, and I know that this is a mistake. I've seen it. I've seen this line. E5 is a very important move. Now I try to immediately exploit the fact that his dark squares are weak. By the way, I've played in the same way against Danny Ranch, chess.com's chief chess officer, and got a winning position out of the opening recently. Check out my podcast with him. So now I just jump in with the horse, and yes, the horse is going to jump to either d6 or sometimes even f6, and his position is very questionable. This is, by the way, this is very precise. This game is very precise. I played at 98% accuracy this game, so check it out. My coach, I showed it to him and he said, good job. So here I'm already close to winning, but I have to find the precise moves. He's prevented me from jumping in with the knight to d6 with check. So I calculate g4 is logical move, pushing the pawn and taking the knight, trying to dislodge it to put my knight on d6. But of course it leads to complications because my king will be weaker and I have to calculate everything. I cannot calculate everything. It's blitz, of course. Intuitively, I realize that g4 is correct. I try to double check myself and then I do it. Just do it, as Shia LaBeouf used to say in the famous Nike commercial. So if he moves the knight wherever he goes, I will jump in with my knight. But he will be able to take my knight on f3 with check. Then I take with the queen, and yeah, there are some complications because he can check me with the queen. He could have taken the e5 pawn with his bishop after having taken my knight on f3, because the e5 pawn would be without a defender, but then his f7 pawn would be hanging. So he's trying to calculate this all in his mind. I'm also calculating very tense position. I understand that probably this is where the game will be decided. Either I will exploit my advantage and win very convincingly and very fast, or I will spoil the advantage, which I do very often. So let's see. Okay, I check him. An important decision is where to go with the king, because if he goes to f8, the square where the dark squared bishop used to go, he is in danger if my queen or rook comes to the f file. That's why he runs to d7, and he is putting some hopes on the fact that he will be able to take the f3 knight of mine with check and then check me with the queen. But I correctly calculate that it's all fine. I take the f7 pawn. Yes, he will have a check. 2 checks in a row actually, but my knight here is very nasty, and I notice a trap that I'm about to set. I notice a trap. He takes, I take, and after I check, yes, I'm nodding, I'm bobbing my head because I see the nasty threat. The nasty threat is to move my dark squared bishop to g5, attacking the queen, and the queen, the black queen, will have no squares to go after rook f8. So rook f8 is an automatic move. It's not a mistake because already black has nothing. Bishop g5, and it's lights out. Lights out. Andrew realizes this immediately. If he takes my knight, I'll take his by the rook. I'll take his rook with check. Important, and then I'll take his queen. So his queen is lost. If he takes my bishop by the queen, I'll take the queen with the knight. He takes my queen with the rook. I'll take the rook with the knight, and I emerge up material. He will have significant material deficit, and I will have just a winning position. So this is of course not good for him, and he realizes that, yeah, it's time to resign. 2-0. Andrew is not happy, obviously, but this game I played almost like a computer, so yeah, he's not happy, as you can see. Sorry about that, Andrew. Andrew used to beat me a lot, actually, so this was just maybe not the day when he was in his best shape. But let's see, game 3. Game 3 is very exciting. Actually, we played 4 games, but I will show you 3 games. At the end, I will tell you why. So, again, I go for this King's Indian-esque setup, and again, Andrew avoids the mainlines theory. This is closer to what Hikaru used to do a lot in online blitz and sometimes in offline rapid chess and blitz. So he fine chattels his bishop, and this formation is very flexible for black. Again, I strike with c5. He develops his like square bishop to d3. Very often white develops the bishop to e2 here, but both are fine. I don't know the theory here. There is some theory, mind you, but By the way, check out my cats. Now now there are 2 of them in the background. I actually have 4 cats. So yeah, and 3 dogs. So I again developed my light square bishop to b7, but here it's more appropriate because he cannot block it immediately. So the bishop is very strong, and the position is around equal. Already the engine even says that black is a tiny bit better, like minus 0.1, so practically equal. Of course, anything can happen, but Andrew somehow like is not happy with his position, or maybe he's like taking the time to decide on the plan, and he castles short, which is logical. And notice how fast I'm playing. I'm very happy about my time usage in this one because I often overthink in blitz. Here I just make sensible moves. Maybe they are not always top engine choices, but oh, this is Kulebiaka. It's my cat. You might have seen him in the podcast episode with Daniel Naroditsky, the first one. So he likes sometimes playing the piano like this. So I make the moves fast. This is important. And I don't make any like horrible blunders, at least up until this moment. Here, of course, the best would be to just trade and trade the bishops for me and allow him to put the queen on a6 because there is not doing anything useful. But somehow I got not scared, but got hesitant and decided, okay, let him take my bishop. I will take with my queen. And well, probably both options are okay. The engine says it's still equal. He develops one of his rooks, probably anticipating the opening of some files. And now I strike with e5. You know, I'm a very dynamic player. I like aggression, I like initiative, but sometimes this doesn't serve me well because it was an inaccuracy pushing this pawn. Because now he can exploit some weaknesses in my camp. Whenever you push your pawns, whenever you advance your pawns, you gain some space, but you also lose control of some squares in your camp. And here, this is exactly what happens. Now the d6 square is weak in my position, so he will be able to exploit it probably, or will he? Let's see. So here I decide to take by the knight, an inaccuracy first, the engine says, but not a fatal one. I decide that trading the knights is good for me here. Well, it's not horrible, but the problem is, even had I taken with a pawn, this is the move that is the problem. He wants to fork me on d6 with the knight, and the d6 square is the square, one of the squares that has weakened. And also he's attacking my e5 pawn with his bishop and his knight. It's attacked twice. And here I go for some dynamic decision. It's dubious. It's dubious, of course. It's a mistake according to the engine, but I think practically this was the best move because this made him find some moves that led to complications. So, of course, I do not retreat my knight when he attacks it because that would lead to his knight infiltrating via d6. I counterattack his knight and I decide I'll just sacrifice a pawn. And the most important thing is the fact that I did all this very, very fast. So, again, I'm playing the clock, not just the opponent. He doesn't find the best move here. I don't remember actually what the engine said the best move here is, but he's up a pawn. I have some compensation. His pawns are doubled, but also the problem is that for him that he doesn't have enough time. It's blitz and his e3 pawn is weak. He defends it with his rook. But now I decide to put even more pressure. I attack his rook, and he makes a mistake here because I can just take his pawn with check. If he takes me, I'll take his rook on d1, so he cannot take me. He drops back, and now I've practically equalized. But I have to find also some good moves, which I am unlikely to do given the speed I'm making the moves and given the complexity of the position. So my rook is hanging, my bishop is hanging, I have to do something. And if I go bishop d4, blocking the d file, then c3 is very strong and my bishop is pinned and I lose the game. So I have to trade at least one rook. The engine says it's an inaccuracy. I could have gone bishop g5, I guess, but still, the evaluation of the position has not changed, so maybe it's not that horrible an inaccuracy. So white is a little bit better, but nothing too crazy to write home about, as they say. So my bishop is still hanging. This is a mistake because he will now hunt for my bishop, like Liam Neeson in the Hostage movie. You remember that scene when he said, I don't know who you are, I don't know what your intentions are, but I'm going to find you and I'm going to kill you. This is what Andrew is now mentally saying about my bishop. But he has to find me and he has to kill me. First of all, it's not easy. The engine, of course, says that white is much better, +1. But how to find this over the board with time ticking down on your clock? And again, I remind you that I've put some pressure on his clock. This is a good move, g3. He's restricted my bishop. He wants to disallow it from escaping his camp. But now I go rook c8. It's a mistake objectively, but it has an idea. An idea is to push c4. Second this pawn, the evaluation bar is jumping. He has no time to calculate everything and he makes a mistake. I would say it's an inaccuracy. Now the position is equal. So my strategy of playing fast worked out at the end. So my bishop is hanging, my queen is hanging. I can take his pawn on e4 with check, but then he'll take my bishop with his king. And I was calculating this, whether I can sacrifice like this. By the way, it's the third cat in this video. Her name is In. Yeah, I have no choice but to trade the queens. And I decide, okay, I'll trade the queens. Probably it's a drawn endgame. Of course, I would have loved to play for a win, but it is what it is. Probably I didn't deserve to play for a win, considering the fact that I was much worse. So now my bishop is hanging. I have to drop it back. I don't know why I take so long to go to b6. This is the only logical square. I cannot sacrifice my bishop, unfortunately. The pawns will not advance. Now he makes an inaccuracy somehow, but it's not fatal. The position is still equal. His bishop is stupid. This is the problem. His bishop is very weak. He cannot activate it. He pushes the pawn. I push the pawn back. Again, playing very fast, defending the pawn. And now it gets down to seconds. It's very, very, very exciting, as blitz always is. So I can go for a repetition of moves, but I do not want to go for a repetition. I put my king on e6, which is a better square, and he panics here. He sees that his time is ticking down and he doesn't know what to do, and he makes a blunder, and at the same time his flag falls and I win 3-0. Yeah, but the position was already losing after this blunder, unfortunately for my friend, and I win actually the fourth game as well. I will not show it to you because he blundered in the opening to Andrew. I'm sure that he will have a comeback next time. He will be trained, more informed next time. So I expect to see very, very dangerous Andrew next time. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and see you in the next one.